Now to what promises to be a historic week in Donald Trump's hush money trial. The former president will be back in court on Tuesday for closing arguments, then jury deliberations, and at some point, a verdict. Joining me now is Lonnie Davis. He's the former legal advisor to Michael Cohen and former special counsel to President Bill Clinton. To start, Michael Cohen, the former personal attorney for the former president Donald Trump and the star witness in his criminal trial, who you used to represent, Lonnie, ended 4 days of intense and revealing testimony last week. What are your reflections on the impact of Michael Cohen's testimony and what it may have on the outcome of this case?
Well, I'll answer your question, but first, Rev, I'd like to thank you for your defense of transplant patients who need blood tests to be able to detect early rejection. You've been a champion with the great performing artist, Albie Shore, a transplant patient, to convince of all people the Biden administration to provide Medicare for non-invasive blood tests. And I'd like to thank you. I'm part of that process, so I have to get my thanks into you.
I'm committed to that. Okay. Go on.
Michael Cohen and I have had a long journey together where he came to me and he said, I want to tell the truth about what I know about Donald Trump, about 10 years of my lying and my being ashamed of myself of what I did for Donald Trump helped me. I talked to his family and I knew that his family was quite upset with the work he had done for Mr. Trump and all the lying he had done for Donald Trump. So I said, Michael, in front of Elijah Cummings, my friend from Baltimore, who was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, in February 2019, I said, Michael, the only way you're going to be believed is to own your lies and admit them on national television under oath before Congress. And that's what he did. So the long journey with Michael Cohen, including being cross-examined by the same kind of prosecutor, the same kind of defense attorneys for Michael Cohen's prior employer, Donald Trump. He was subjected to a cross-examination in the Attorney General Tish James's case, and the judge found him to be credible and truthful. But having said that, let me remind everyone that the testimony and the documents speak for themselves, and the testimony from Donald Trump's adherents and loyalists, David Pecker, Hope Hicks, all testified that the money that Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to give to Stormy Daniels, an adult film star, to keep her quiet before the election. And the word directed doesn't come from me, doesn't come from Michael Cohen. It comes from federal prosecutors who worked for the Trump Justice Department. Yeah. They found that Donald Trump directed Michael Cohen to pay that money right before the election and that it was politically motivated. That made it a crime. And Donald Trump didn't do the time. Michael Cohen did, even though Trump directed him to pay that money. So on that one issue, the crime is established by the documents.
So would that be, Lonnie, the key takeaway from the entirety of the trial, that was established? Is that the takeaway you take as we head into final arguments? That's the smoking gun? Because what I did not see, and I'm not a lawyer, but I've dealt with the cases for many years, and you are a lawyer, one of the best in the country. I never saw where they talked about Weisselberg with the notations that he had made, which clearly corresponds with the payoffs. They never put a witness on the stand that said that's not what they were. Is it not the smoking gun that the jury can't imagine a defense that was never presented? All they gave was Costello. They never brought in anybody else that would be contrary to the evidence the prosecution put up.
Exactly. Documents speak for themselves. Believe your lying eyes is what's going to happen in the jury room. They don't have to use anything that Michael Cohen said. They can look at the document that Alan Weisselberg, the closest person to Donald Trump, who refused to testify, is doing time because he committed perjury. That document was mathematically $420,000 divided by 12 is $35,000 per month, which Donald Trump, as a sitting president, wrote out to Michael Cohen, and he called them in a tweet reimbursements. All the jury has to do is believe that document and know that they were reimbursements that Michael Cohen was paid back for what he advanced for the crime of paying off Ms. Daniels before the election. And that's enough for them to convict beyond a reasonable doubt without relying on Michael Cohen at all.
Now, this is probably the only one of Trump's slew of cases to reach a jury before November's presidential election. And I want to remind our viewers that Trump faces 34 felony counts of falsification of business records. The potential punishments range from a fine to a 4-year sentence in prison, or a combination of fine and prison time. How do you anticipate this will go, Lonnie? The verdict and the sentencing. How do you call it?
Well, I'm going to, for the very rare time with you, Reverend, not answer your question because I respect the jury system. If they vote to acquit, it'll be an acquittal. If they can't get a unanimous verdict, Donald Trump will lie and call it an exoneration when it's a hung jury. And if they, of course, convict, I'll respect that because I respect the rule of law. Mr. Trump has made it clear in his own words that he doesn't respect the rule of law, that he'll only accept an election where he wins. And if he loses, he'll cause some type of an insurrection as he did on January the 6th. So I'll respect the jury verdict, but I'll say this again to you, Reverend. Despite all the media coverage, which I thought was a little bit breathless, about a moment where a lawyer screamed at Michael Cohen, "You lie, you lie." Well, guess what? That's not evidence. The jury will see evidence from Donald Trump's friends and from the document by Alan Weisselberg that proves that Donald Trump lied. He reimbursed Michael Cohen for a crime that Michael Cohen did time for. There's plenty of evidence here for the jury to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. But whatever happens, Rev, I will respect the jury's verdict.
Okay, let me ask this. If Trump is convicted, and there are 34 counts, all of them felonies, if he gets one conviction, he's a felon. If he's convicted, it would likely be several weeks or months until he is sentenced as a first-time offender of a nonviolent crime. He may be temporarily released on bond, but he would be a felon. How do you expect the verdict, whatever it may be, to change the precedent of prosecuting a president, and how could that verdict impact the upcoming election, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, I don't favor incarcerating Mr. Trump at all as next president. I think that would be too divisive. But I wanted him to be held accountable. That's why my long journey with Michael Cohen began. He's been indicted, and then we'll see if the verdict. But to answer your question, the prosecutors who worked for Donald Trump as the Southern District of New York federal prosecutors called this crime of bribing somebody to be silent and not to divulge information that might affect voters in a presidential election, an impairment of our democracy. So if he's convicted, there's the idea that what is the crime? You hear a lot of Republicans say. The crime is what the federal prosecutors working for Donald Trump said. It's a serious crime against our democracy to pay somebody to withhold information that people need before they vote. That's Donald Trump's prosecutors who call this a serious crime. So if he's convicted, we'll quote from his own prosecutors that this is a serious crime that should cause even Trump supporters to pause before they vote for him.
Attorney Lonnie Davis, thank you for being with us, and please come back after the verdict. We'll talk about that, and transplantation we will talk about.